Okay, so this is a project that we started working on about almost 3 years ago now, and it really entails reuse, it's a word, magic word, using what we already have to incorporate into curriculum for K through 12 students, what we have in Mountain West Digital Library. So why should we teach with primary source sets? Doesn't make sense. And I think, yes, it does make sense because primary sources, they provide a firsthand evidence about an event or an object or a work of art. And it's very different from a lot of the Google unverified searches our children are doing these days. They also provide a wonderful research opportunity to look at a very authentic view of history. So we're looking at content that's coming from the research rooms in museums and also at academic libraries, special collections environments. And we're in close proximity to all this great material, so it really does make sense. And we've already done the hard work of digitizing and preserving this material, and it's also relevant, most of our collection material, to cultural heritage and history. And we are in close proximity to thousands of records. And so it's an opportunity that makes sense if we have the time. Right now, we are designing our primary source sets to help K through 12 students only, and educators, to meet the core content standards for social studies and history. And I'll talk more about how we're working on that project. And we've been collaborating with the Department of Education on those standards to make sure that we are in compliance as we continue to build out our toolkit as well to be used in those classrooms. So when it came down to building the actual interface for the toolkit, we were looking at a few digital exhibit platforms. We just kind of conducted a brief system platform evaluation. We talked to Marriott Library, we thought about Umbeka, but we decided to use WordPress because, one, we were able to create a custom domain for ourselves, and that's important to us when we're looking at Mountain West Digital Library branding. That is MWDL-epublishing.org. That is the web URL. And we also felt that WordPress had a really kind of modern look and feel and was easy to use, and it had a lot of options. And it was also relatively easy to customize. So this project is still underway, and it's not quite ready for prime time, but we're almost there. I need to talk to some of our project members that we've been working with before we do a little blog post about this project and do further outreach. So we had some challenges. So if we are doing one thing, obviously we're not doing something else, right? And we all already have our full-time jobs. So one of the biggest challenge was not only the time constraint and the staffing, but also the expertise. So we're not subject matter specialists when it comes to what is useful for history students or social studies students. So it really it made sense to find a collaboration that would help us work closely with educators. And plus, we wanted to make sure that we took the time to develop a methodology for teaching and learning that would make sense and would be in compliance with DOE requirements as well. So we had a number of meetings, and we planned and we collaborated, and we planned some more. Then we came upon a layout, and we came upon a methodology. And what helped was we followed guidelines by working closely with this professor at Utah Valley University, and also we had some contact with the Department of Education through a working group that I am serving on, and I'll talk more about those collaborations now. Partnerships, oh, there we go, the right slide. So a few years ago, we were hosting an information booth. I believe it was at a Utah State History Conference, where we were passing on information on Mountain West Digital Library and our resources. And then soon after, I was contacted by the principal of a local charter school, and there was interest by the principal, and she asked if we could actually use our resources to create some supplemental teaching guides and tools for students in grades 6th, I think, and 7th. and 8th for history classroom curriculum. And after a few meetings with the school administrator, we were provided with some rough guidelines. She gave us some categories and gave us some sort of a template to follow to develop these resources. So following these guidelines, we developed a resource sheet. It was really a Word doc. It was a simple document that outlined a list of resources under a handful of categories that were given to us using MWDL records. And the interesting thing is we were never really given feedback from the principal of that charter school, I think. She had a lot on her plate, so that project kind of froze right there. But then what helped was move this forward. So fast forward a few months later, I was talking to Catherine McIntyre. It's so great kinds of conversations we have in this network and what they lead to. And she put us in touch with the professor that I was mentioning in the Department of Education at Utah Valley University. And he was very interested in the document we had developed. He looked at it very closely, and he asked if we could further tweak the document to include additional resources under specific categories that would follow the Utah Social Studies curriculum for grades 4th through 9th, and he explained how that would work. By the way, by this time, I was also starting to take some classes in the School of Education. So I said, of course, I'd be really interested. The project also tied in with my own research interests. And I also, in my classroom, started to introduce the project to fellow students who were, most of them were administrators and school teachers and principals around the state of Utah. And they were then also looking at that time the toolkit wasn't really developed, but they were looking at the resources in MWDL, and then they're really excited to see the final product of this toolkit when it's done. And then what helped move the project even further was that I was invited to participate in a Utah History K-12 working group, which I was just talking about. And so MWDL received a voice around a table that also had some state historians, archaeologists, the Board of Education, and a statewide K-12 project coordinator for Utah History Day. Her first name is Wendy, and I can't remember her last name right now, and she is awesome. And she happens to work with, yes, thank you. And so I had an opportunity to talk about this project at this platform with the historians and the Department of Education and the project coordinator, and we formed some really helpful and useful partnerships. And through this collaboration, we were able to further tweak and also kind of start to cross-pollinate our projects, because the State History Department is also working on developing some primary source sets and massaging the content to fit into lesson plans for schools. And then through further collaboration with the Utah Valley University professor, so what happened is we had a part-time employee working on this project. Her name's Avalon Snell. She did great work, but then she left. We didn't have the time or energy or resources or the expertise to further develop this. But working with this Utah Valley University professor, we collaborated with him on a grant proposal. And it was his local grant from his school that allowed us to get some resources in the form of 3 graduate students from the School of Education. And as a graduate thesis project, they started working on further developing the education toolkit. And they also, it was really helpful because they started auditing what we already had on the toolkit as well. And so they have graduated, but the grant is just expiring, and they are now educators, and in the fall they're going to start teaching in classrooms, which is great. So the plan is that they're going to take this toolkit in whatever form it is at that point and start teaching and using this as supplemental teaching resource, which is very exciting because this is a field study for us and a chance to get some really good feedback from actual educators and actual students. But the problem with that is that we're going to run out of resources. So in a few weeks, there's going to be a call out for people who are interested around the network to participate in a peer review committee, a peer review process to look at other resources in the Mountain West portal and see if they would be a fit for this education toolkit. And we're thinking about a sustainability plan to continue to move this forward. And this is an idea that I actually got from Nancy Lombardo. I'm talking to her, it was last year. The reason we held out on making that announcement was because we stumbled upon this grant, and that's been working for us. And there was also some work we were doing behind the scenes with Axel Ramirez, who's the professor at UVU, and he didn't really have time at that point. So there's going to be a call out, so watch out for that. Be really interested in hearing who's actually interested, and I don't have any expertise in what would work in Utah schools, and I'm not a subject matter specialist, but just by a raise of hands, can I get a sense of who would be interested to, okay, I have at least 4 people, 5, 6, perfect, that is so great. So another really cool thing that we're planning on doing right now as a follow-up to all of this, okay, I'm just making sure I've covered all the points that I wanted to talk about, is that we are planning a fall research day for local Utah schools in the Salt Lake County right now, at least. And we hope to have active participation from K through 12 educators, students and parents of the students. We're working with Marriott Library to have a piece where we show them the actual content and sort of the historical side of things, and then looking at the digitized and preserved versions of those actual artifacts. So we've been talking with Jeremy a little bit about that. We've been talking to our special collections department about that, and there is a lot of interest. We're also thinking of having, we've been talking with the state archaeology department, and they have some really good, really cool AR and VR applications that they've developed that would allow students to actually walk through historical architectural sites. And so we're planning on also making that a part of that research day, and then sharing the toolkit in preparing students and showing them how to actually conduct research. So this doesn't have to actually be limited to Utah. We can have further collaborations, and if any of you want to participate in this, please let me know. It'd be really, we may have to actually have it be a 2-day research day, and if it works out, we could have it be an annual event also. And the good thing is we get an audience right from the students and the educators, and it's right there. And unfortunately, what happens in libraries is we develop all these services, and the Special Collections is doing, they've developed some curriculum, I've heard, from the artifacts that they have, and they actually have some tourists come in, and they take a look at their curated displays, and then we have people who've developed all of these digitized material, and we're working with primary source sets, but that outreach is what is usually very difficult for us. So great opportunity, and we're working with Wendy, and she already has a lot of contact around the state of Utah, so yes, please, if you're interested, send me an email. Also watch for that call for the peer review committee. So let's see. That's all that I have for now.